Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in February. Okay, so I'm not going to even hide it. You can see some of the books already. I have literally 12 physical books in front of me, with the exception of one. So yes, you heard it. I actually read 13 books this month. All of them were a combination of the physical and the audiobook versions of them. And there's one that I don't have the copy of, but it was available for free. So I had to read that one too. Before we get into the video though, if you haven't already, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. That way you never miss another one of my videos. Okay, so this is going to be a very long video. Let's get to the books. Let's talk about the book that I don't physically own, but I read anyways this month, and that is The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. Now, the back of the book says a lot, so I'm not going to read you the back of the book because it does give a lot away. If you're going to read a book like this, I suggest that you just go into it blind, kind of like I did, because the synopsis does give away a lot. So for this book, it's literally rich people drama, inheritance drama. That's basically all I'm gonna say about it. It's scandalous, it's juicy, it's gossipy, and it's really good. I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3. I don't want to necessarily say that this was thrilling. This was not thrilling at all. I mean, there wasn't any to me, I wasn't surprised. It's more of a really great scandal story, gossip story than anything else, but I did enjoy it a lot, and I also do enjoy reading books that revolve around rich people drama when it comes to inheritance and their lifestyle and how they live. That's pretty much all I'm going to say about that book. I suggest that you just go into it blind, but again, it's one of those books where I gave 3 because it wasn't thrilling, it was more like a mystery, but a very juicy one. The next book I want to talk about, Softy and F. I did not finish this book, but I plan on finishing at some point this year, and that is A Fragile Enchantment by Allison Saft. Now, I only got up to chapter 15, page 180 on this book. Literally over 50% through the book, but for some reason it was just boring. Like, I could do boring, I could do slow burn, but I was just not in the mood for it. It was super slow and not a lot was happening. The writing is fine, I just had to put it down because I wasn't really in the mood for it, if that makes any sense. So I do tend to finish this book, but I don't know when. This story, we're following a seamstress and a brooding, very grumpy prince. The seamstress comes from a poor background, you know, like from a poor family trying to make ends meet. She is hired by the royal palace to create the prince's suit that he'll be wearing for his royal wedding. It's their romance. The magical aspects of this book are in her fingers. She is a magical seamstress, meaning she can create beautiful, elegant pieces that make you feel certain things, that are enchanted. If you want to attract the entire ball, she'll put an enchantment in there, then you'll be the only person that everybody looks at during that time. So things like that. Again, it's not a bad story. I foresee myself finishing in the near future. I just was not in the mood of a slow burn romance at that point. The next book I read is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is the first book in, I think it's called the Good Guide's Murder series. It's a 3-book series. These are YA mystery thrillers. They're just so much fun. I ended up giving this one a 4. I had a great time reading it. It was just a good time. It wasn't really I enjoyed it, but I didn't absolutely go crazy over it, if that makes sense. It was a fun time, it was a good story, but that's pretty much it. So in this story, we're following Pip. Pip is a senior in her high school. It's her senior year, and she has a project that she's working on. 5 years ago, one of the most popular girls in school was murdered. The person that was accused of her murder was her boyfriend. So that case was closed, the crime was solved, and people moved on with their lives, except for Pip. Fast forward to senior year, where she is given a project, and for this project, she decides to reopen her own investigation and reopen this case on her own and kind of investigate to see if that girl's boyfriend actually did murder her and conduct her own findings, because Pip in the story does not believe that that guy actually murdered his girlfriend. So that's what the story is about. It's really good. I like the fact that it has quite a few set of characters in the narrations. I thought that was fun, and I think that's always fun when the audiobook has a full cast of characters narrating the book. So again, this was a good time. I gave it a 4 because it was just that. It was a fun time. The next book I read was A Curious Beginning by Veronica Spidwell, and these are kind of described as cozy mysteries. I think there's 9 books in this series so far. I think the 9th one came out this month. This was another one of those books. If I had to explain what this book is about, it's literally a feminist Sherlock Holmes mystery. I believe every book has its own mystery but follows the same set of characters. There's also a romance involved, and it's just a fun time. I had a great time tabbing everything in this book. Like, I even had a little chart, a little tab chart to go with it. For this story, we're following Veronica Speedwell. She is a butterfly hunter. She's also an orphan. She was adopted in her lifetime, and after her aunts pass away, she finally decides to venture off and try to keep conducting her studies of butterflies. One day, as she's about to leave her home, she gets attacked by this man, almost killed, but then gets saved by a baron who happened to be an old friend of her mother's whom she's never met in her life. He comes in there not only to save her life, but to kind of warn her and say that her life is in danger, and it's his duty and his obligation as a friend to her mother's to keep an eye on her and protect her. He can't do that though, so he asks in a favor from a friend to watch over Veronica and make sure that she doesn't get murdered or, you know, anything like that. That friend happens to be Stoker, who is this brooding, grumpy taxidermist historian, and obviously there's the mystery of her being attacked and somebody wanting to kill her, along with sprinkling of romance in there between the two. It's good. It's a fun time. It's a great book. I gave it a 4. I had such a blast reading it. The banter between Veronica and Stoker is so good. It's perfect. I loved everything about it. I love the backdrop of this is in London. The setting takes place in 1887, so it's historical. I just had a great time reading it. I highly recommend. I gave this one a 4 star. So the next book I read was Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas. I mean, are we surprised though? I am on a Sarah J Maas binge, and right now the series I'm working on is Throne of Glass. This would be book 4 in her Throne of Glass series, and of course, as you can see, I annotated the crap out of this. Stay tuned because I did do a reading vlog for this book and this book, spoiler free of course, so I'll be sharing that, and a few other books in my stack as well are included in that reading vlog. It's gonna be a long reading vlog, so just be prepared for that. But I gave this book a 5 star. What I loved about this specific book was the fact that you get to see a lot of the loyalty in these characters, specifically in this book. Like, the loyalty is perfection in this book, and it's so heartfelt and it's just great. That's really what I appreciated about this book. I also appreciated more of the characters being introduced. You get to follow certain different casts of characters and what they're doing in their lives, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was badass. I thought it was great. I was introduced to characters that I thought I would despise at first, but I absolutely love now. I'm just having such a great time with this series. I love it so much. Again, 5 stars. Next book I read was Raiders of the Lost Heart by Joe Segura, and this is exactly what I thought it was gonna be. I think I gave this book a 3 star. It was fine. I honestly have to say that the steamy scenes in this book, this is a very steamy book, by the way. The steamy scenes were like overkill. I didn't really enjoy them as much. It went over my head, even though I love a good steamy scene. I just didn't really care for it in this book, and I was right about predicting what my feelings were about this book. It was a fun time, but very forgettable. If I had to describe this really quickly, this book is a rom-com version of Tomb Raider combined with Indiana Jones, and that's pretty much it. It was fun, but that's it. Very forgettable. Again, didn't really appreciate much of the steamy scenes, and the characters were kind of annoying at some point. I do recommend it if you're wanting to read something quick, fun. It has the Mexican jungle backdrop. It's got the summery rom-com vibes. Sometimes the banter was really, really good. But aside from that, it was okay. Nothing out of this world. And then I read, finally, Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood, and I don't know why I do this to myself, where I just hold off on our books because I think they're going to be too scientific-y for me, and no, I forget how much I love Ali Hazelwood's writing. I gave this one a 4.5. I enjoyed it so much. I had such a great time reading this. I love Ali Hazelwood. I love her writing. I love that she just talks about STEM in all her books. All her books are very scientific and STEM heavy, and I just eat it up. The banter between the characters is freaking phenomenal. The fact that she writes about these very high, strong, feminist, resilient, smart women is really sexy, honestly. I like reading about that, and again, her writing, it flows so nicely that even if she's talking about all these scientific terms that I've never heard of in my life, it is still an enjoyable time because she also not only has the STEM backdrop of intelligent, amazing, badass women, but she also has really good steamy scenes. She also has really good banter. It's great. Her books are fun. I recommend it to anybody who is just wanting to read something great with everything in it. She provides everything in it that you can ask for in a romance, to be honest with you. This one we're following Bee and Levi, and they're working for NASA, never have gotten along. It's your typical enemies to lovers. He's very stoic, very grumpy, and says only a few words, and she's very bubbly and outgoing. She's got pink hair and thinks she's got tattoos, and it's just good. It's such a good story. It's their romance. I highly recommend it. I had such a great time reading this book. Then I finally read Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This one I think I gave a 4, but I'm gonna change it to a 3 because it was fine. It wasn't what I expected it to be, but it was good. And just when the actual things are revealed in this book are revealed, it is scary as shit. And excuse my language, but that's how I'm gonna put it. This is probably one of the scariest things that a person can go through. It didn't give it a 4 because I was expecting something different from this book. I think I'll give it a 3.5. I mean, it's not a horrible story. It's good. It's interesting. It is thrilling, but it definitely wasn't something that I was expecting. This one we're following Jules, who gets a job at this very prestigious, well-known Manhattan apartment. Jules in her life right now is struggling. She's barely getting by. She has no money, trying to make ends meet, and she literally gets this dream job of getting paid $4,000 a month just to house sit an empty, beautiful, modern apartment. And that's pretty much it. She gets to live in this really beautiful apartment, and she literally just gets to house sit on her own. Nobody's there. She's not taking care of anybody. She just gets to live in it for a few months, and she gets paid $4,000 a month. I mean, that is so, like, that's just a dream, to live in this beautiful, luxurious, high-end apartment and get paid $4,000 ridiculously just to live in it. Too good to be true, right? Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Then I read my most favorite book of this month, and I just love it so much. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what people say about the writing. I don't care. I loved this book so much. That is Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. This book was so fun. I haven't really done a reread of books in my reading journey yet. I will tell you that this book, as soon as I finished it, I wanted to pick it back up and read it, and I loved everything about it. The corniness, the cheesy lines, the banter, just the dry humor at times. I completely love it. And of course, if you don't know already, this is considered a fantasy romance, and it's literally an assistant to a villain. And that's pretty much what the story's about. This book reminds me of those cheesy night movies that are comedy movies that you see on TV, where there's knights and there's castles and it's supposed to be very serious, but then there's dry humor and corny lines and cheesy lines and sentences that just make it so fun and funny. This is it. This is it. 5-star. I highly recommend it. I think the author was a well-known person on TikTok or something like that. And I don't care what people say. People say that the writing is not great. I loved it. You know, sometimes you just have to read something cheesy and corny and it works and it just clicks. It's so fun. My experience with this book was like no other. I had so much fun reading this. So with this one, we're following Evie, the assistant, and the villain. He is not named throughout the book until like further down. And Evie is trying to make ends meet. She's struggling to provide for her sister and her father. One day she's walking through the forest and she basically saves the villain who is being attacked by knights. He's being chased and attacked by knights. So she saves his life. They meet from there. She talks about the fact that she's looking for a job and she needs a job, so he decides to hire her as his assistant. Don't get me wrong, he's still a villain. He's still severing heads. He's not expecting her to do it. He just wants an assistant. you know, to be his assistant for all his duties, his appointments, his scheduling of severing heads, and it's just such a fun time. My favorite character in this book was, if you could see this little cute frog right here who's holding a sign that says help. He is actually a royal prince that the villain has captured. His name is Kingsley, which is the cutest thing ever. Every single time he comes into the story, I just get so happy because it's so funny, because you have this cute little frog with his little crown, and his name is Kingsley. He's always trying to escape, you know, he's always trying to escape the villain, and when he tries to communicate, he's always holding up these one-word signs, and it's just hilarious. It's so funny. And also, the villain, even though he's a villain, he's also nice, and he doesn't really want to admit that he's nice, because you're not supposed to do that as a villain. So he has a little pedestal next to his carriage so that Kingsley can get some sun, and it's just so good. So many great funny lines in this book, just so hilarious. I highly recommend it. It was such a fun time. You will not regret reading this book. 5 stars. Then I read What Lies in the Woods by Kate Ellis Marshall. Honestly, I don't know why I read this. This was not what I expected it to be. I think I gave this a 2. This was so underwhelming and disappointing, and it was so predictable. I thought the characters were annoying. I mean, it is scary what happens in this book, but not in that way. I also don't like when there's a mixture of thriller with romance. I don't like that. Like, I don't need a romance side plot in a thriller. It's so unnecessary, and I really don't care about it. One of the things that really annoyed me about this book is the main character, how the way that she would cope with her trauma is by literally sleeping with anybody that's in front of her, a man that's in front of her. And I know that there's people that struggle and cope with things differently, but I just feel like that was just a very bad made up characteristic of this character in particular. That's just my opinion. That's my honest opinion. I'm not trying to talk bad or bash the book, but again, everybody loves this book, and I just absolutely hated it. I thought it was one of the, not to be mean, but I thought it was one of the dumbest thrillers I've ever read in my life, and I'm so sorry if you liked it. If you liked it, don't get me wrong, like, everybody has different opinions, but I just did not like this book for many reasons. There's nothing that made it redeem itself, and it was just whatever, you know? This one we're following Naomi and her 2 friends, Cassidy and Olivia. It's a small town. When they were kids playing in the woods one time, they literally got attacked by a serial killer. Naomi, the main character, got literally stabbed 17 times and somehow made it and survived it. She got stabbed 17 times. They put the guy behind bars. Many years pass by. The friends have been hiding a secret, and that's basically what the book is about. I'm not gonna say anymore, but because of this secret, things are being brought up again, and maybe things weren't what they seem, type of thing. Not my thing. Not my kind of thriller. Then I read A Frozen River by Ariel Lahan. This is a historical mystery, more on the fiction side than a mystery, but this was so good. It was very slow, but I enjoyed it. I gave this one a 5 star. This one, we're following a midwife in 1989 who kept a series of diaries, you know, journaling her experiences in her life. There's also a mystery in this book where 2 very well-known men in their society, a judge, and I think the other guy is a soldier or something like that. I don't know. But these are well-known men in this community who have been accused of raping a woman while her husband's away. One day, one of those men are found dead in the river. And the story goes from there. And this is a story about resilience. It's a story about how far Martha goes to unravel certain things and to stand up for what's right. How many things these men got away with. It's a really good story. It's hard to read, you know, because it is about sexual assault, but it was really good. The most interesting thing about this author that I learned, because I read the author's note, which was immaculate, was the fact that she writes her stories based on facts of history. So there was a midwife named Martha back in the day who literally, even though she had all these accomplishments and has done so many things in the past history, she almost was forgotten, you know, like, is more like like a calling to the author to kind of bring her story up to light and shine light on the fact that this woman was such an incredible person back in history. It's so tragic, and it's just hard to kind of acknowledge and know that women were treated the way they were back then, weren't taken serious, even though the fact that they've accomplished so many things, they were almost pushed under the rug and forgotten. And again, it's one of those things where I don't really like to read about sexual assault, but I know it's important. I like to read about it knowing that I'm getting myself into it instead of being kind of slapped in the face with the possibility of it happening in a story that I did not expect to happen. You know what I'm saying? So again, 5-star. The author's note in this book was just so good, and I really appreciated this story for what it was. Again, it's one of those things where it is based on history, and if you read the author's note, a lot of it is factual facts. Like, a lot of the things that happened in the story happened the way that it happened, that happened in history. Some of it was kind of dramatized, or some of it was kind of like said differently. What really happened to the woman that was assaulted is crazy, and it's sad and it's tragic, but again, such a great impactful story. I think everybody should read this book. It's such a good book. Then I read Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. Again, this was a book where I was just gonna give it a 3 because honestly it was so slow. It wasn't until the 64% mark of the book that I really actually was glued onto the pages and intrigued, even though before that, way before that, from book 1, people were getting murdered one by one. I just wasn't really interested in that and didn't really care. It wasn't until the plot twists and the actual realization of what this book is about that really got me. And so I gave this book a 4.5 because it was so good. I love thrillers like this that steer you one way and then you had no idea, and this whole time you're guessing and you're thinking, this is it, this is what happened, I know this is it, this is so predictable, but it's not. It's not what you think, and it was so good. This book follows Daisy Darker, who has left the family for a long time, doesn't want to be part of the family, but then she decides to reunite with them due to her Nana's 80th birthday in this secluded Victorian old mansion in the middle of nowhere, basically on a cliff. And then on literally Halloween night or Halloween Eve, this is kind of like a retelling of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. So when midnight strikes, they find her Nana dead, and literally every hour within the hour, somebody ends up dead, and the story goes from there. Highly recommend. This was such a good book. I'm sure you've already read it, but this book like blew my mind because again, the entire time I'm like, this is okay, this is fine, this is kind of boring even though people are being killed off. I'm gonna give it a 3 whatever. After I hit the 64% mark, I was so hooked and so enthralled and interested in the other end of the story that I was like, this is the kind of thriller that I love. And the last book I read this month was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I finally did it, guys. I finally read Home Before Dark. And again, another Riley Sager book that is not scary. Honestly, if I'm being honest with you, it was not what I expected it to be. It was interesting, so I'm giving it a 3.5, but it wasn't anything that I expected it to be, and I was hoping that it was what I expected it to be so that I enjoyed it more. It was fine. So in this story, we're following Maggie, and 25 years ago, they lived in this beautiful house. Something really bad happens in this house that her and her family literally picks up in the middle of the night and leaves. Maggie doesn't really have a recollection of what happened in that house, but her father, because of the horrors that happened in this house, ended up writing a nonfiction book about their experiences. Fast forward to 25 years later, her father passes away. They didn't get rid of the house, and Maggie's basically in there to help renovate, fix anything that needs to be fixed, and sell it. The story goes from there. That's all I'm gonna say. This book was okay. Again, it wasn't anything that I expected it to be. This is considered a horror. I was not scared, guys, okay? And I get scared easily. But it's a good book. I still recommend it. Just go into it blind. Don't even read the synopsis because that's probably what I didn't air, to be honest with you. Okay, so there you have it. Those are all the 13 books that I read this month. I will count A Fragile Enchantment because I got over 50% of that book. Okay, so I will count it in this video. I am hoping on finishing it at some point whenever I'm in the mood for it. But yeah, those are all the 13 books I read this month. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and I will catch you on my next one. Bye!